the shooting range. In this episode, the mighty Yugumo-class destroyer and a new location. We discuss the latest additions to naval battles. The iconic German half-tracks. Let's take a look at some design choices that made them as good and as problematic as they were. Hotline. The developers answer questions that you've left in the comments. But first, let's start with the first look at the World War mode. We've already had a segment on our show where we answered the most important questions concerning the long-awaited World War mode. Today, we have something even more exciting for you, because we're finally at a point when we can discuss actual gameplay. For those of you who spent the last few years in a comfy bunker, World War is a special mode, where War Thunder squadrons go into battle to fight for world domination. Every action by every player ultimately will affect the global situation, while squadron commanders try to control the flow of the war on a strategic level. So, how does it work? The first thing the players see is an interactive Earth globe with all the operations you can take part in. On the operational map, you can track the movement of whole armies and see how many units and what units are there. The commander's screen has a slightly different layout. The officers also get the information concerning reinforcements and the time of their arrival. The gameplay itself is pretty straightforward. The generals send their troops on missions, for example, give them a task of conquering specific zones, while regular soldiers do their best trying to carry out the missions in the field. The commander has arguably the toughest job. He or she is responsible for monitoring the strategic plan, sending in reinforcements, ordering air support, and setting up armies for prompt performance of tasks at hand. The operations themselves have to be completed with specific units and within a specified time. And there are loads of different types of missions. Take bombing missions, for example. There are bombers attacking columns of ground vehicles, bombers that are set to destroy enemy artillery, etc., etc. And as we've said before, the World War mode introduces quite a few brand new scenarios as well. Some advice for all testers. Discipline is the key. Make sure that every squadron member understands that he or she shall go to battle only after a direct order from a CO. This kind of arrangement will save you a lot of time and nerves next time you go to war. Don't waste your aircraft. There are special retreat zones on every map. After you've dropped all your bombs, just fly there and the game will understand that your vehicle safely left the combat zone. Get another one, and go back into the fray. The same, or almost the same, goes for the ground forces. The fight ends when one of the sides runs out of vehicles, so it pays to be extra careful. It's often a good idea to retreat and then use these tanks to mount a surprise attack from the flank. Pay close attention to the morale of your troops. If you're retreating all the time, or, what's even worse, are constantly being defeated, your armies might surrender to the enemy forces. Do not let that happen. Encirclements are deadly. If you cut off the supply lines of enemy offensive, they will quickly burn through the available fuel and food, and that's not a position you want to be in. And always, always be vigilant. Track all enemy movement on the map. If you can organize an encirclement attack, so can your enemies. Good luck, Commander. Up next is a brand new Japanese vessel. Finally. The Yugumo is a bit trickier to play than the destroyers of other nations. It's a bit sluggish and slow, and the main gun can only fire HE shells. You'd be right to ask, why would I want to play something like that at all? Well, here's why. The Yugumo has 3 paired 127mm guns aboard. Yeah, they all fire high explosive rounds, but that only means that you're constantly taking down enemy crew members and causing fires, which is amazing. Furthermore, you also get 2 torpedo launchers with 8 torpedo tubes in total to help you out in close combat. And on top of that, to protect you from enemy aircraft and smaller boats, there are, wait for it, 24 25mm guns. Ain't nobody gonna get to you through those. And just in case, the Yugumo has also 16 depth charges. It's nice to have more options, but the thing is, even if you set the delay to 10 seconds, it's very unlikely that anyone would ever think of clinching with you. So, if you're in the RB mode, just drop them off at the start of the match. This way, they won't detonate inside the ship later on. Overall, the Yugumo is a pretty decent pick. It definitely can't reliably win a one-on-one fight against another destroyer, but it has an unsurpassed level of protection from other threats. Oh yeah, there wasn't just this new ship that testers got to see recently. There was also a new capture mode map, the Fiji map. It's a huge location designed specifically for battles involving big ships. Destroyers and motorboats spawn in their own separate areas, and there's even a landing field for planes to get some ammo mid-battle. The views here are simply marvelous, but don't forget why you're here. A big ship rushing to the capture point between the shelves has a good risk of going aground, and getting a ship this heavy off the sand is not a trifle task, to put it lightly. That's why the motorboats will do most of the capturing, while the destroyers cover their approach and provide fire support from the distance. Also, keep in mind that the teams don't get a lot of tickets here. That means that if somebody quickly captures and holds a point, the battle might end even before the destroyers get into the fray. Now, you wouldn't want that, would you? By combining the cross-country capabilities of a tank with the steering control of a truck, engineers produced the Halftrack vehicle. And the Germans were the true masters of the trade. In the 30s and the 40s, half-tracks were all the rage, and no one made them better than the Germans. Their half-track tractors and armored cars are as immediately recognized as the iconic T-34s, Shermans or Tigers. The development of German tanks and half-tracks was supervised by the motor vehicle section of the German Army Weapons Office. The specialists of the office were in charge of basically everything. They drew up concepts, outlined the requirements, and eventually placed orders for specific items at a specific manufacturer. That's exactly how, for example, Germany got its impressive line of half-track tractors that could tow loads of up to 18,000 kilograms in weight. And such a centralized approach really made a difference. These German tractors had a lot in common, despite being built and designed by different companies. They even look very much alike. One of the biggest challenges that engineers had to face was the problem of the durability of both tracks and rollers. To allow their vehicles to maintain fast speeds and run thousands and thousands of kilometers, the Germans came up with an ingenious design for a half-track chassis. The tracks consisted of individual steel crosspieces held together in a continuous link by a series of pins, each of them held in place by a pair of lubricated needle bearings, not the usual steel pins and clips. And yeah, it is as complex as it sounds. The track links were also shod with rubber pads. Furthermore, the track ran on road wheels overlapping and interleaved in the so-called Schachtelaufwerk design. The road wheels were tired in rubber. Even the idler was rubber-coated. All in all, the designers did everything they could to reduce friction and increase speed. And it worked. After the war, the Americans conducted a curious experiment. They outfitted the M24 Chaffee with a chassis taken from a German half-track. It turned out that this modified Chaffee was much easier to tow, and the distance it traveled under its own momentum was almost twice as big as the one of the regular tank. Another notable feature of some German half-tracks was a peculiar semi-automatic gearbox. It had two levers. One was used to control speed, and the other the direction of movement. The driver first chose a gear, then depressed the clutch, and, with the help of a vacuum system, the gear shifted quickly and efficiently. Using their half-track designs, the Germans created a whole range of different vehicles serving in a multitude of roles. There were prime movers that were used to tow guns and tanks, self-propelled anti-aircraft guns and half-track cranes, and a whole lot of half-track cars, APCs, supply vehicles, tank hunters, flamethrower cars, forward observer, radio and scout vehicles, you name it. As you no doubt have guessed, these German designs, while a technological marvel in itself, sacrificed simplicity for speed and agility. The chassis were expensive to make and required a lot of maintenance. And we mean a lot. It's no coincidence that the Czechs, who started to manufacture their own version of the SD-KFZ 251 after the war, decided to ditch most of the original systems and outfit the vehicle with a conventional Tatra diesel engine. But still, it's hard to argue that the Germans managed to create an impressive design that paved the way for the use of half-tracks all across the globe. Get ready for the traditional last part of our show, Hotline, developers answering questions from the comments. Strictly speaking, it's not the most serious-minded section of the show. If you want answers to be given with solemn faces, feel free to appeal to the official War Thunder forums. Here, we'll have a more light-hearted discussion of the big questions of War Thunder. The first message comes from a player called Casual Guy 634. He wants to know if the Italians will ever get their own tank tree. Yes, Casual Guy 634, they will. Rest assured there will be a long list of cool vehicles for you, and every other history buff who likes Italian machines as much as we do. Then, there is a question from a random dude that likes War Thunder. Hey Gaijin, will you add a feature where a dead squad mate can be your rear gunner on a bomber? Hey random dude that likes our game, thank you for doing so. We thought about that, but this feature is almost impossible to balance properly, and we don't really want that. Also, have you ever heard of dead people being good marksmen in the afterlife? Yeah, thought so. A player that goes by the name of Woodruff42 asks, are there any ambitions for more serious esports events in the future? Absolutely. We're pretty happy with the experience we had making Thunder League, and we have no intent of stopping. Stay tuned. And the last very important message is written by Nandito Denny. Why is the name of the show The Shooting Range? That's a good one, Nandito Denny. The thing is, well, shooting is where you get the most amount of fun in games about war, isn't it? So we thought, why not? That's it for today, but feel free to write your questions in the comments below. We do read them all, and you might see some of them answered in the next episode. If you like what we're doing, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. See you on The Shooting Range.